Hi everyone, Dr. S here. What we're going to do now is go into part 2 of the SWOT analysis for existing and startup ventures. So let's go ahead and jump in. And what we're going to be focusing on is the purpose of the whole thing, as well as double clicking into how to do the strengths and weaknesses component of the analysis. So let's talk about purpose. Really what we're trying to do is we're trying to improve performance for the existing or the startup venture. And performance might be in terms of the ultimate desired effect that you're trying to have with the organization, mission impact, financial impact, non-financial types of outcomes. And so as a result of the organization existing, there's certain things that happen. And you can improve performance mostly by the cause. I mean, the way that you're going to actually improve these outcomes is by looking at the causes, which are operational actions, your support activities, as well as the strategic decisions. For example, your unique value proposition for the organization, the different types of design decisions for the business model itself. And so that's what we're trying to achieve in terms of getting the types of outcomes that we want through looking at what leads to those outcomes. So that's what we're trying to accomplish. And so for an existing client, we're trying to improve their business performance or their organizational performance. For a startup, we're trying to increasingly make it so that it's a viable, sustainable, scalable venture. Now, how does this look even more specifically? What we're really trying to do is we're trying to move from their current business model to a new business model. And so we are going to do an analysis and description of what they currently have. I'll talk a little bit more about that in a second. And then we're going to design and imagine a new one with and for them in terms of their business model. So when we talk about looking at their current one, what we want to be able to do is we want to be able to describe their current business model using the business model canvas. So thus the use of an existing organization or client allows us to be able to learn the business model canvas and learn what things are happening inside an existing organization. And then you want to simultaneously analyze the internal and external environments, drawing strength and weakness and opportunity and threat conclusions, which I'm going to talk about more in a bit. And the simultaneous is really, it's iterative. So you'll do some of the internal, you'll learn some things, you'll do some external, and you'll just keep doing this until you kind of find matches for how to improve, opportunities to improve the business model. And that'll come out in the work that relates to making recommendations, which leads to the second part. You're going to ultimately recommend a newly designed business model with the business model canvas, and you're going to support those recommendations. Now, some of the business model that currently exists will stay the same, and some of it will change. And so the change pieces are the parts that you're going to really focus on in terms of, if you have a client, what different types of changes they should make to their existing organization. If you have a startup, what sort of changes you need to be testing, building prototypes for, testing, and iterating forward and making changes, iterations and pivots on. And finally, you would recommend a detailed plan of action and resource requirements to make the change happen. So ultimately, when you're working with a client, that's what you would do. So moving into the next piece of this, and we're going to focus specifically on the strengths and weaknesses scale. So there's a variety of things, and in our case, 9 key areas that will be trying to rate the relative strength or weakness of the particular area in the business model. And a key thing to understand is that few things need to be a 10. Just a few things, not all things need to be a 10. So for example, you could have some things that are competitive neutrality. They're just good. They just need to be good enough. Making them better won't actually help. Some things need to be better than average, likely for satisfaction or for competitive reasons. And then finally, there's a few core things that are central to your competitive advantage, central to your core competencies, central to your unique value propositions that you're making to your external and internal stakeholders. And so those might be a 10. So for example, let me give you an example. Part of my business that we're working on right now is offering transformational retreats. So it's actually an adjustment to an existing business model. We have an accounting system, and that accounting system needs to be a 5. It needs to be average. It doesn't need to be great. It doesn't need to be even really, really good. It needs to be good enough in order for us to be able to not be at competitive disadvantages or to have to spend lots of time to get lots of headaches from it. So once we're up to a 5, we stop investing in it and we just maintain it. Whereas we have some things that actually need to be better than average, but they don't have to be the best in class. For example, these might be our partner relationships. So if we do transformational retreats in different geographic locations, we have to have, above average partner relationships, but we don't have to be the best partner. We also need to have really good customer prospecting to get, keep, and grow our customers. But again, it doesn't have to be best in class. It needs to be above average, and we need to have it work really, really well. So we're going to invest in it. But it doesn't have to be the thing that differentiates us from the competition. And there are some things that need to differentiate us. For example, the landing page communicating our unique value proposition to our customers, that has to be a 10. We have to nail that thing. Additionally, when customers experience our retreats, they have to have a superior experience so that our product word of mouth promotions will go really well for us, and we also will have a reputation building effect that people say this really is a world-class experience for us. Now, moving from this, we ultimately have to get to how does this play out in the analysis itself. So for your client or your startup, you can walk through the components of the business model canvas to do the internal analysis. And here I have a business model canvas, and I've numbered these. It doesn't have to be this numbering system, but it can be this numbering system, so you may as well go ahead and use it. And what I would recommend that you do is you create a table to record your different types of conclusions. We're not even getting to recommendations yet. We're just getting to conclusions. And you can see that each of the different numbers from above are put into this table: unique value propositions, customers, customer relations, etc. And what I did was, with the client or with your own concern, you can put in what is the desired. So the unique value proposition, like that I had mentioned for the retreats, is they have a great customer experience. It's going to be differentiated from others. Currently, maybe it's a 6, and so there's a gap of 4. How do I go from 6 to a 10 becomes the question. And then you can do this for each of the different things. So maybe, your customer relations, knowing about them, your internal capacity for being able to describe them, maybe that needs to be a 7 or 8, and maybe currently right now it's a 5, so it's a gap of 2 to 3. And you can see how that continues to work on. So ultimately, you're drawing conclusions to identify the gap. Then you ask yourself, is this actually something that could be acted on for your client or for your own existing business? Could this actually be changed? Can I act on it? Can I act on it now? Is it and then finally, is it a priority relative to all the different things? And ultimately, you'll take these conclusions that you make and make recommendations. But first, we want to complete the external analysis, which will be part of part 3. So move on to part 3 and figure out how to do the O and the T.